It is a post-Clasico aftermath edition of the Sports Burst alongside Gary Bailey. I'm Andres Cordero. We've got so much to talk about the stalemate between Barcelona and Real Madrid at the Camp Nou. Plus, we'll get into a little bit of FIFA Club World Cup. The final is set. It's the final you expected to have the champions of South America, Flamengo, against the champions of Europe, Liverpool. And Mikel Arteta, reportedly, imminently to be named as the next Arsenal manager. We'll give you a few thoughts on that right now on Sports Burst. It's not me hosting Sports Burst if I don't immediately fluff the very first line. Once again, that's Gary Bailey. I'm Andres Cordero. Welcome into a brand new Sports Burst, and it is the first day after a Clasico that was maybe more of a chess match, more of a tactical battle than most people expected. You'll be disappointed with no goals, Gary Bailey, but It did leave us a lot to talk about. And so my first question to you is this. Your general feeling about the two teams coming into the Clasico versus coming out of the Clasico changed how?
Certainly from a Real Madrid point of view, it's been a long time since I've thought of Real Madrid as one of the best in the world. Yeah, fantastic European Champions League, no question, but always well behind Barcelona, sometimes 17, 18 points behind at the end of the season. And coming into this, I thought if Real Madrid come out of it with a draw, it'll be a really, really good result. They played so well that I came out of it thinking, hang on a second, maybe they've got a chance of winning La Liga. That's how good they were against Barcelona. Conversely, Barca did nothing. They were dominated in midfield. They defended well, I'll give them that. They lost the midfield battle until Sergio Roberto was put to right back and Arturo Vidal came in. They had very little service to the front three, which are your gold. You've got to get the ball to them. And so I thought Barcelona were very, very poor on the day. Now, my only question then, Dre, is this. Was it that Barca were poor on an off day and Messi misses the ball completely, which I've never seen before? Or was it that Real Madrid were that good that they made Barca look bad? Now, if it's the latter, then we're about to see a new dawn for Real Madrid. If it's the former, then Barca will catch up, they'll play better in the future and probably win La Liga. So we're sitting in the situation where it could go either way.
So you're asking whether it was that Barcelona were poor or whether Real Madrid were good. And I think the answer is yes. Right? I think both things are true here.
Possible.
This is probably the first time in a long time that Barcelona fans, and by the way, do send us your comments. I do have the comments up now finally, so we'll get to your questions, your thoughts about the Clasico. We'd love to hear from you. But this is the first time in a long time, I think, that Barcelona fans could look at Real Madrid's midfield with a bit of envy, because for so long it's been Barca's midfield that has dominated not just La Liga, but really the world. And there are some questions now. For example, there was a big surprise when Sergio Busquets didn't start this game for Barcelona. In fact, he was announced in the starting lineup. Rakitic replaced him before kickoff. Rakitic says that he knew he was going to be starting during the team talk in the locker room. So this was known before the lineups were announced. And it's weird that one of Valverde's assistant coaches said that it was a technical decision, that Busquets was fine. After the match, Valverde said that he had been running a bit of a fever, that he was available. They could have used him if they wanted to, but they opted not to. That said, Rakitic did line up. Is Real Madrid's midfield better right now than Barcelona's with Casemiro, Toni Kroos, and Fede Valverde?
It's a difficult one for me because their midfield was actually four. Because if you take, it was in a diamond. There was Isco at the top, Casemiro at the bottom, Kroos and Valverde. So 4 versus Barcelona's 3, absolutely. They were better, they dominated.
Well, especially I would say because the 3 for Barcelona so often had Rakitic sitting right in front of the back line to protect, or dropping in between the 2 center backs. So it was even worse than that, really. It was sometimes 4 against 2.
2 against 2. Now, if it's Busquets and Rakitic and De Jong and someone like Sergio Roberto at right back, who often goes and joins the midfield, then I think you got more of a comparison of 4 against 4. When Arturo Vidal came on and they had that sort of shape where Sergio Roberto was able to come up and join them, then they matched Real Madrid. And I thought for the last 30 minutes or so, then Real Madrid didn't look so good in midfield. So yes, up until that time, tactically, Real Madrid got it right. Valverde changed it. From the moment he changed it, Barca at least had 50-50 of the midfield, and if not more. So no, I don't think Real Madrid have a better midfield. I just think that tactically they got it right versus Barcelona.
This was the first time Barca dropped points in La Liga at home this season. They were a perfect 7 wins from 7 going into that match. They've scored 30 goals at home versus something like 11 away from home. They were clearly better at the Camp Nou this year than they had been away from it, where they have had their troubles, and it's where they've basically suffered their worst La Liga performances. But what does it say then that Madrid came into the Camp Nou, and I think there's a general consensus here, outplayed Barcelona, and the only thing missing for Real Madrid were the goals.
Yeah, but brilliant. Like I say, if that's because Real Madrid were better than Barca, it wasn't because Barca had an off day, then I'm beginning to look at it and say, wow, okay, for the first time, Real Madrid are the real deal. I still think they need a regular striker. You cannot rely on Benz to get all your goals all the time. Bale's not going to be a regular goal scorer. Rodrigo's probably too young. Hazard will come back and get a few for you, but there's still one more player for me. They need to be right up there with the best sides in the world. But everyone else, Mendy I thought was fantastic at left back. Dani Carvajal, Courtois settled in. The 2 central defenders, as always, Ramos and Varane are brilliant. So yeah, fantastic. I still think they're missing one piece up front.
Madrid are.
Before you can call them really top.
And that piece is not bad. I just wanted Mo Sadi a moment ago saying Barca proved again that they're very Messi dependent. I don't think that's necessarily false. I also saw just a moment ago that Barca had the better chances, which actually I don't think that's necessarily wrong either, because for the talk that Messi Messi did not have one of his better games this season. Yeah. He struggled to create chances. He still created the 2 best chances of the game, including the little lob over the top, the long lob over the top to a streaking Jordi Alba, which he drops that into a pint glass, and Alba just fires wide. Yeah. That was arguably the clearest chance to score for either team, and it was for Barcelona. Yeah. Granted, Real Madrid did have more shots than Barca, more shots on target, but 0 shots on target in the second half for a Real Madrid side that has Benzema in it and that has Gareth Bale in it.
Yeah, no, for me they're not sharp enough up front yet, but the rest of the Real Madrid side is fantastic. And yet people are talking about Messi and saying, well, Messi didn't have a good game. I thought he did enough. As you say, there was a couple of really good passes. He wasn't brilliant, but he did enough to cause problems. The 2 who didn't do anything that I'd be looking at is Suarez. Now, normally Suarez is in your face. He's pushing, he's shoving. There's elbows. He's looking to get people.
Wasn't even as combative as usual.
No, there was nothing. It was as if he looked at Ramos and thought, nah, don't fancy the fight today. And the other one is Griezmann. Now, Griezmann's pace in the previous 2 games, it got him away to score the first goal against Mallorca and the first goal against Real Sociedad. He was quick. I didn't see him threaten hardly at all. I didn't see him take people on. I didn't see him try and get past them with pace. So I would look at Griezmann and Suarez and say they didn't perform. Messi was just about okay on the day.
But how much does that have to do with the fact that the game for big chunks of it was being played in the Barca's final third, the final third closest to Ter Stegen, and I'm not at all convinced that some of that wasn't by design from Valverde. In that there were times when Barcelona would lose possession to Real Madrid, and instead of press and instead of drop back, they just sort of stood there in their defensive block waiting to see how Madrid would do and then react. And so when Barcelona do get the ball back, it's as far away as possible from the likes of Griezmann and especially Suarez, who's the point of that attack up front.
Sure. I mean, that's a valid point. They didn't get the service up front. There's no question about that. But they try to play out of the back quite often, Barcelona.
And couldn't.
And they couldn't. They got picked off. Real Madrid was sharp. They were cutting the passes. They were closing them down. That's where Busquets was missed, because his ability to get on the ball and play it very quickly gets him into transition. And so Real Madrid locked them in. And I was surprised that Valverde took until whatever it was, the 60th minute, before he goes, you know what, I need to make a change. Maybe it would have been harsh to have made that change earlier, but from the moment he pulled Sergio Roberto back and put Arturo Vidal on, suddenly they were more combative.
Sure, but even then, as you say, 50-50, right? So it wasn't as if switch was made and all of a sudden the entirety of the game was taking place close to Courtois. But in fact, neither goalkeeper, I recall, making any miraculous saves in this one. As mentioned, 4 shots on target for Real Madrid. All 4 were in the first half. Maybe the best shot on target they had was Casemiro from a long way out, nearly curling it in and Ter Stegen had to dive out for it, but it's one he probably should have had because of the distance, so he saves that anyway. And I believe it's from that ensuing corner, that then the controversies came into that match, because there were Madrid are complaining about 2 penalties and about the use or non-intervention of VAR in 2 plays that happened virtually as part of the same play. From a corner kick, there was a shirt pull, clearly from Rakitic on Rafael Varane, and then there was reportedly a handball by Karim Benzema on that same sequence, followed by Lenglet putting his studs onto the thigh of Raphael Varane, who was on the receiving end of both of the penalties that Real Madrid were appealing for. Where do you stand on this? Do Real Madrid have a right to feel robbed by this?
Okay,
Should VAR have changed it?
Question, the handball, was it the very first thing in that sequence of three?
No, the very first thing would have been the shirt pull. By Rakitic on
Varane. So it was a shirt pull. There's absolutely no question. If Varane is not grabbing onto Rakitic and there's no reciprocal shirt pull, then it's a penalty. It's a penalty if the referee sees it. If the referee doesn't see it, he has to then go to VAR or allow VAR to have a look at it. Now, then VAR has to decide, do they, and you made a very good point, they would have looked at it, no question. Do they then say, referee, whoa, you need to go and do the normal thing there and have a look and decide for yourself? It didn't happen then. It didn't happen the week before when PK was pulled down in the final moments against Real Sociedad and Anoeta. And both those situations, I got the sense that VAR said, you know what, if the referee doesn't give it, do we really get involved with these things? Or maybe they have another camera that we don't have that shows that Varane is doing something that he shouldn't be doing, and that's why they don't give it. What I'm concerned about is, Dre, they don't give us the reason.
Right.
If they don't give it to us right there in real time like they do in American football, give it to us straight after the game and say, right, I know you're going to ask this question. I know it's going to be the big talking point of all the newspapers say, here's what happened. Yes, this happened, la, da, da, and that's why it wasn't given. They don't say a word. So we and the rest of the world are now asking and wondering, and should they and shouldn't they?
That's curious. When I was calling Serie A for beIN Sports, I believe it was Gianluca Rocchi, but it might have been a different referee, who suggested that referees give post-game press conferences.
Yep,
that after the fact they face the media, and his suggestion, this is a referee suggesting this, was so that referees can sort of defend and protect themselves from any sort of perception that they cheated one team or the other.
Yeah.
At least he wanted referees to be given the opportunity to give that explanation.
Agreed.
I just want to, there's one thing that drives me nuts, and that's when people say, well, VAR didn't look at it. Why did VAR not look at it? VAR does look at it. VAR does look at it because the moment, again, those two fouls happen in the same sequence, and then the moment the ball goes out, the referee is holding play while VAR is still looking at it, VAR is still communicating it. What happened here is VAR didn't intervene as to suggest to the referee that he should go and have a look at it.
Why not? You see, for me, I'm watching the game, I can see a clear pull on Varane. Right. I think that, and VAR looking at the same thing, I think they should at least say, referee, just stop and go and have a look. Now, what we'll tell you is there's a pull on Varane. Now, maybe Varane had Rakitic there, or maybe Varane did something, or maybe there was someone else we don't know about. But at least let the referee go and have a look, because then you get the sense that the referee has made a decision, and then if he goes no, then you go, okay, well, fair enough, that's the way he calls it. But to not even get him to look, that's what I think upsets the Madrid fans and a lot of neutrals is, hey, what's going on here? Is there some shady stuff?
Right.
That's the problem.
Well, just to be clear, it's 2 penalty decisions, not 3, that Real Madrid are writing a strongly worded letter to the authorities about.
That's going to make a difference.
Just as Barcelona wrote a strongly worded letter after the incident in Anoeta, when at the death of a tied game, Piqué appeared to be pulled down by his shirt and no penalty was given. Just to be crystal clear, for me, Rakitic's pull on Raphael Varane is a penalty. And it wasn't spotted and it wasn't given. Should VAR have intervened? Based on what has happened in La Liga this season, they were consistent not to change that, because the number of penalties given by VAR for shirt pulls inside the area in La Liga this season is exactly 0. Not one time has VAR said that because of a shirt pull, a penalty that was missed on the field should be given. It was the case again against Piqué last weekend, and this time against Varane.
But you also brought up a good point. If Varane's not going to get to the ball, is it even a talking point? Because if you're pulling someone who's not even part of play, then who the hell cares? If you're pulling the guy who's about to hit the ball in the back of the net and you're pulling him, then it's relevant. So maybe that's the reason why. And again, just tell us the reason, VAR.
I'm not laughing here. I'm laughing because the graphic has changed. Dre says Varane should have drawn 2 penalties.
Oh, right. No, but
we're nothing if not accurate on Sports First.
But the second one wasn't. I mean, there was cleats up on Varane from long
So I've got something to say there as well, because so based on what we saw there, that's a penalty. Now, it's bang in that he's heading the ball away almost at the same time as he makes contact. I actually think the contact is there just before Lenglet manages to head the ball away. But if, as some are claiming, which again I haven't seen in any of the replays, there is a handball on that cross that is sent in, it's then handled by Benzema. That happens after the shirt pull and before the studs.
Okay.
So that handball would nullify any penalty afterwards, because any handball inside of the area is supposed to be blown dead
afterwards,
immediately.
but not the pull beforehand.
Exactly. So the only thing with the pool is, for whatever reason, La Liga is refusing to overturn any shirt pulls in the area as penalties. The thing that you alluded to, which actually is also, again, splitting hairs here, is that FIFA and UEFA, the way that they want to apply the laws of the game is that if the player who is going up to head the ball or to take a shot is being pulled by the shirt, then it's a penalty. If it's somebody else that's not involved in the actual shot, then it shouldn't be a penalty. Make of that what you will. Let's move on from those points.
Good.
Because obviously Zidane looked happier after than Valverde. Valverde was his usual sort of serious self, whereas Zidane, he said he was upset because his players worked hard and maybe deserved more. Did they deserve to come away with the win? And just how much of a perfect fit is this manager for this club? Because the players, given all of the injuries they've had, the players aren't dramatically different from the team that started for Real Madrid last season. Have they just had more time to get over, who should not be named leaving the club? Or is it really just Zidane comes back and magic happens?
I think it must be with him. I think there's a belief in him. I think he's so chilled. I've very rarely seen a manager, because managers are always under stress and pressure. He's just so chilled. He talks about it. You can see him look at the players even during the match and say, just move there, just do that, everything will be fine. He is the perfect fit. His 3 European Champions Leagues were just, unbelievable. He walked away at the right time. When he came back, I'm like, no, what are you doing? I mean, you're made of gold, and you come back and you're going to get absolutely trashed if you don't win. And yet within 6 months, he builds a team. I'm now looking at going, hell, maybe you're going to build a team that goes on to actually be a great thing. So huge kudos to Zidane and that team and the way he's building them. I still don't think that I can put them in the same category as a Liverpool, a Man City, a Barcelona, or a PSG. I think they're just below, and I might be wrong.
But you are including Barcelona in that list.
Yeah,
that's what I was going to ask you
I still think Barca are a better team.
My impression coming out of that game was they're level on the table. They kind of deserve to be. They're level in the Clasico 0-0. By the way, Zidane becoming the first Real Madrid manager ever to go 5 consecutive Clásicos at the Camp Nou without losing. Sure, they haven't won the last 3, but they also haven't lost any of the 5 under Zidane. And my impression was, yes, these 2 teams are even. There's nothing to separate them at the top of the table, but neither one is a nailed-on real Champions League contender yet this season.
And I agree with you. I think Barcelona can get stronger because of their front 3, whereas Real Madrid have a front 1, maybe with 2 with Hazard. You've got to look at European Champions League and say that Real Madrid struggled. They got absolutely thumped by PSG away. And they were a bit unlucky to get drawn at home, but they finished second in their group. And Messi was missing from the first 4 or 5 games for Barcelona, which, had he been fit from the beginning, could have made a difference. So I look at it and I think Barca, for me, they're still slightly better because of those front 3. But Real Madrid have gone from being way behind to being right behind there. And maybe if Rodrigo comes good, or they get another signing up front, or Hazard and Ben's work, and maybe Bale still comes good, they could be a challenge. But I've got a question mark there.
Yeah, because actually I just want to, John Ice there a moment ago on the comment saying that they checked Carvajal's handball, which wasn't a handball. The referee didn't go over it. Am I mistaken to say the referee did not go over to the screen to see that himself, right?
I didn't see him do it, no.
Anyone remember? I don't recall him doing that. If he did that, then that was
VAR should have done better is the thing up there.
Sure, but here, so to suggest that they looked at that but didn't look at the others, they clearly did look at the others.
Yes.
So the only difference would have been if the referee actually did go and look at the monitor himself, which I don't recall whether he did or not, but I could be mistaken. Again, when the referee holds up play after those 2 incidents, that means VAR was looking at the play. Please stop repeating that VAR did not take a look at it. In any case, you say that Madrid are 1 player away or need 1 extra player in that attack. So a front 3 of Benzema, Hazard, and Bale isn't enough?
Bale doesn't do it for me, and I like him as a player. I really think he does well, and he scores some big-time goals, but you need regular goal scorers. Let's compare. Benzema 12, Messi 12. So in terms of goals, like for like. Suarez 9, Hazard 2, Bale 2. Now that's the problem. It's the number of goals. And then Griezmann 6. Griezmann's got more than any of the other Real Madrid up front. So
Griezmann was the top scorer for his club each of the last 6 seasons in La Liga. 5 for Atletico Madrid, 1 for Real Sociedad, and he's now like the 3rd scoring option.
So that's the thing with Barcelona is when they get ball to the front 3, which they weren't allowed to do by Real Madrid in the Clasico, but when they get that ball to the front 3, you almost can't stop them.
Our graphics operator just noticed that you can't spell Varane without bar. That's very clever, Gino. Thank you.
You can't spell Varane without VAR. I like it.
So, do they need a number 9 then? Is that, or do you think they need a scoring winger around Madrid?
I think this. If you gave them Sadio Mane or Mo Salah from Liverpool, either of those two, I think you could jump Real Madrid.
Did you just say if you gave them like 2 of the top 5 for the Ballon d'Or, then they'd be
I'm
2 of the top scorers? Just give them 2 of the top scorers from
You
the Premier
asked me
League
what
last
difference,
season, and they'll be
or
fine.
I tell you what, if they get Mbappe in the close season, then,
Wow, yeah.
and if they get Mbappe at a time when Messi's just coming towards the end of his career, that could then take the shift all the way from Barca, who dominated this decade, to Real Madrid, who dominate the next decade. That's how important Mbappe is.
Can we have a little appreciation time for Federico Valverde, who is probably one of the best stories in La Liga this season? If you saw his celebration when they level at the death against Valencia and Mestalla at the weekend before the Clasico, he has lost his mind. He's on his knees. He's banging the turf. He's going nuts. Like, he is Real Madrid's spirit animal right now. And he's done so much to make Toni Kroos a better player, because he's sort of freed him of a bit of that defensive responsibility, because he covers so much ground. He helps Casemiro. He helps in attack. There's a little bit of a difference. So I've been watching Fede Valverde play since Madrid basically graduated him from Castilla and moved him on to Deportivo La Coruña on a loan spell to get a bit more playing time. Depor were relegated, but Valverde there was absolutely brilliant, and he had a lot more possession. He was charged more with leading the ball forward. Right. Real Madrid have other players that do that, especially when Isco lines up. And so what you get from Fede Valverde is that he can be just the facilitator. Whatever the game needs, he can do. If you need an extra player to join the attack, he's there. If you need an extra man back in transition to defend, he's there. He's got the most energy of anybody in that midfield, so he's constantly closing other players down.
Yeah, and that's the big thing about him is I got the sense that Kroos and Modric had become tired, or just they're great players, but their legs may be getting a bit tired. Maybe they're just not going to put in those extra yards. He comes in and does exactly what you say. He's up and down. He's got the energy. He's got the passion. He's taking shots. And all of a sudden now, if you're in midfield and you're Kroos, you're like, I'm getting shown up here. This kid is showing. I need to get a move on. Modric needs to show. Isco put in a couple of good defensive performances, but when Zidane took over a couple of years back, he came. I remember his very first press conference. He said, I only asked one real thing from my team. I asked them to work hard and fight for the shirt. He says, I know they're good players. I want them to fight. And that's what he's got them doing again. He's got a midfield that's hustling and bustling and closing, and Valverde is a massive part of that. And I agree with you. Big props to him. I think he's been the player of the season so far for Real Madrid.
They just have to sort out the whole more scoring thing. We do have a little bit of time left. We went very heavy on the Clasico stuff, but of course it's literally the day after the Clasico, so we could go an entire rest of the hour. Let's touch on the Club World Cup briefly, because it is what we thought it would be, right? It's the champion of South America, Flamengo, against the champion of Europe, Liverpool. But it wasn't easy for either side. Liverpool really were taken for all their worth against a Monterrey side that scored an equalizer immediately after the opening goal for the Reds. Mo Salah scored. Rogelio Funes Mori leveled 2 minutes later. And it took a 91st minute winner by Roberto Firmino to get the win, to not have to play extra time, and Liverpool advanced. Flamengo, similarly, actually trailed against Al Hilal. They conceded the first goal. They went on to score 2 more, and then there was an unfortunate own goal by Al Hilal that made it a 3-1 scoreline. But both teams went through a bit of adversity in the semifinals, more so maybe than expected. Yeah,
but I think Liverpool left out a number of key players. That man who was behind us there, Klopp, a minute ago. No Mane starting, no Firmino. Van Dijk was ill, no Trent Alexander-Arnold. So it wasn't the full strength team. I think he had a sense of, okay, let's hold them back for the big match against Flamengo, which was a bit of a risk, because as you say, 1-1 against Monterrey, you're thinking if they pop up and score, you're out altogether. But he takes so many risks, Klopp, and they almost always work out for him. But when he needed to, he threw his big boys on. Mane, Firmino, they got the goal they needed. And I hate to say it, but a team that is the one team that I hate more than any other team in the world, our biggest rivals, Liverpool, on the verge of becoming European champions, and they sit well clear at top of European. Of the EPL. So, Dre, on that point, can we just change the topic and talk about something else?
Talk about Flamengo a bit more, I guess?
Please, Flamengo.
Well, I will say this, and you'll enjoy this, because it's credit to Monterrey, really. They represented CONCACAF extremely well. Their manager, Tuco Mohamed, is a very good coach. Is, a bit of a journeyman, but has a very good track record and has this team playing really, really well. And they were competitive against, what may not have been Liverpool's A team, but it still is the European champions, and they had plenty of talent there. as well. So that's going to be a fun final to watch because Flamengo were built for this. It's nice when a plan comes together, right?
Yeah.
8 of the starters for Flamengo in their Libertadores final were signed in 2019, including guys like Gabigol, Bruno Henrique, who were the 2 top scorers in Brazil this season. De Arrascaeta was signed before that, but he was the most expensive signing. So they built the team not just to win the Brasileirão, which they did, by the way, the same weekend as they won the Copa Libertadores, being the defending champions River Plate, but to compete with the likes of Liverpool in the FIFA Club World Cup, and they're now in the final, and we're now out of time. For Gary Bailey, I'm Andres Cordero. Thanks for spending the last 25 minutes or so with us on Sports First. Bye.